Proteus is creating a nearly invisible technology. What I'm holding here is the world's smallest, fully integrated, FDA-approved medical product. It's about the size of a grain of sand, so you probably can't see it. The green thing is the pill, and it's on the little surface, and here's a picture of it. But before we get there, I want to talk about some big, hairy problems in healthcare. So adherence is one of the biggest problems facing healthcare. The World Health Organization says that about 50% of medications are currently taken incorrectly. People don't take them, people take them at the wrong time and the wrong dose. And so what happens is people aren't really getting the full effect of their drugs. They're suffering needlessly, they're not getting better, and we're wasting an enormous amount of money. So that takes us back to this, which is a little technology that we think might help a greater solution in this big, hairy problem. So this sensor, this tiny little medical product, can be manufactured into medication you already take. And then when you swallow it, your stomach fluids biogalvanically power the sensor. So it's like a potato battery. When you were in elementary school, you have 2 electrodes in a potato, different metals on both electrodes, and you power a light bulb. Well, you're the potato in this, and you power the sensor. And once it's activated, it's able to communicate that you've taken your medication. So pretty cool, pretty innovative, exciting technology. But it's not going to make a dent in the big, hairy adherence problem by itself. That's where design comes in. You need to actually figure out how it is that you're going to help people, what their core needs are. And if you design a product that's actually going to make a dent in the adherence problem, nobody's going to see this, nobody's going to notice this, it's going to be invisible. And what's going to be visible is the positive effects that you're having on people's lives. So let's talk a little bit more about healthcare. So there's this interesting dichotomy in healthcare between things that are efficacious and things that are effective. So the pharmaceutical companies and most of healthcare is actually after efficacy. So they want to find that drug that perfectly fits in the receptor so that the molecule works, right? It works in a lab, it works in a controlled clinical study. The problem is that even if that molecule fits perfectly, it may not actually be effective in the real world. And that's because in the real world, people have a lot going on. They have chaotic, complex lives. The mom in the illustration on the right there, you know, she worries about her kids, her pets, her household chores, her job, her hobbies, her social life. And you can imagine how taking your medication might fall by the wayside. So, you know, this technology on its own needs a lot more, because even if a molecule works, even if the receptor fits, it's not going to necessarily be effective. And so it's designers, not pharmacologists, who get the realities that that mom is facing and who have a chance at actually helping. So here's a model that guides my team at Proteus, the user experience team. So a molecule fundamentally works when it's shown in a petri dish, you know, in a controlled trial. Our technology, that little chip, fundamentally works. And what we're striving for is products that are truly engaging, effective, useful. But before we can get to that, there's another bar we have to cross, and that's usable. So I want to step back a little bit and tell you a story about usability at Proteus, since I was asked to talk about the trenches of the startup world. So that little chip that I showed you is part of a bigger system that includes a low-cost disposable peel-and-stick patch and a mobile phone. So you wear the patch on your torso for 7 days, and then you throw it out and put a new one on. It's cheap enough so that you can do that. And it communicates to your phone via Bluetooth. So this patch, besides securely picking up the signals from the ingestible, it's also able to capture a bunch of your behaviors, like your sleep and your activity and some other things, as well as various biometrics like your heart rate, among other things. So it's a complete system, and there are a lot of pieces of that system that have to work in order for this to at all have a chance at helping people in their daily lives. So I want to dive into the patch a little, because this is kind of a cool design story. And since I think a lot of people in here are designers, I think you're really going to geek out on the design story here, since I know I kind of have fun with this story. So the patch has a lot of incredible engineering that went into it to make it work. We're about to launch our 3rd generation patch. And our first 2 generations, they worked well, but the problem is you pretty much had to be an incredible engineer, or you had to have an incredible engineer holding your hand in order to actually use the patch. So what we did is when we started working on this new generation that's coming out very soon, we stepped back and we decided to re-envision the entire workflow and the entire way that somebody might engage with this patch. So to tell you one very specific story, in order to interact with the patch, you have a button and you have an LED. So there's a lot that's happening under the hood to make the patch work. And so what the engineers did is they basically created all of these different kinds of button presses that allow you to do different things. And the LED had all of these different Morse code signals that basically communicated what was happening under the hood. So it was really, really logical. What the engineers did was perfectly logical. The button interactions perfectly mimicked what was happening under the hood. The problem was that if you were a mere mortal, you had 0 chance of using this patch because you effectively had to reference the user guide every single time you wanted to do anything with the patch because you had to remember what kind of button press you had to do. So that was a non-starter. So what we did is my team presented a new mental model. We told the engineers, look, there is one button, you actuate it in one way, it does one thing, and it only talks back to you in one way. And so they grumbled, and we got it to work. But that kind of wasn't the end of it. So the model was, there's one button, you press and hold to talk to your phone, and it just blinks at you to tell you that it's talking. It's super simple. So because it's the trenches, I have to admit, I think about once a month, ever since we've been working on this for about 9 or 10 months at this point, I've had an engineer come to my desk and say, Arna, we have to add a new feature to the patch. It's not going to work. We have to do this. We have to add this new button press. And I say, okay, fine, let's schedule a meeting. So we schedule a meeting. We all get together in a room. They passionately talk about this feature that has to be added. And then I passionately talk about the mental model and why it is that we need to preserve it if we actually want a product that's going to be usable out in the marketplace. And I have to say, I'm really proud of our engineering team because pretty much in every single instance, we've been able to find a really creative and clever engineering solution to preserve the mental model. They've been able to find a way to do things in the background such that what's in the foreground is still that very simple, there's one button, you press and hold it to talk to your phone, and it blinks at you to let you know it's talking. And I don't want to shortchange the engineers here because there has been an enormous amount of creativity and cleverness that's had to go into preserving that and making it work with that super simple mental model. But basically what we've done, to go back to the overall theme of the talk, is we've made the way the patch works completely invisible, right? Users don't care when that it's in different states at different points in its progression. So we've made that completely invisible, and what we've made visible is a very simple, very memorable mental model. So the other side effect of simplifying the mental model of this patch is we were able to go from this instructions for use to this instruction for use. So granted, there's quite a bit of graphic design that went into the second version. Our MD on staff wrote the first version, and graphic design is not quite as forte. But besides the fact that there is graphic design, there's also a lot more information that had to go here to explain how to use it than had to go here. So we're really proud with how much we were able to simplify that and really just give people the essence of what they needed. So we re-envisioned everything about this patch. It was not just the interaction model and the instructions, but it was the form and the patterning and the packaging and the labeling, the whole engagement model that someone has. So the next generation patch goes into our first clinical trial on Wednesday, and I'm super excited, and I cannot wait for our usability problems to absolutely plummet. So stay tuned. So it works and it's usable. So now it's time to look at that third bar, which is the one about engagement, effectiveness, usefulness, delightfulness, surprise. Now, there's something that all these words have in common. Can someone shout it out? Aspirational, another word. Thank you. They're adjectives. They're all emotional words, right? Aspirational, emotional. And the thing about healthcare is there is a lot of emotion in healthcare, but the challenge is that the emotion tends to be very negative, other than childbirth, I'd say. And even that has a lot of pain associated with it, unless you have an epidural. There's a lot of negative emotion associated with healthcare. So how do we design products that evoke these very positive emotions in the healthcare space? So I want to start by giving you an example of an experience we had with evoking surprise and delight. And it was just a tiny step towards healthcare because it was more in the fitness space, but it is very relevant, and you'll see how we can then translate that into healthcare after. So the world's executives are these hyper-competitive, hyper-intense, type A people who are super smart and make the world go round. And we've been engaging with quite a few of these top executives. And for a while, we were really struggling because they basically thought that our system was nothing more than a sophisticated way to count pills. Now, we knew it was a lot more than that, and so we set out to create an experience for them that would surprise them, delight them, and basically change their point of view and show them that our system is a lot more than that. So this is the Power Challenge. It's a game that they played over 3 days. And when you look at it, you don't really see a lot of technology. What you see is fancy packaging and rules and things like that. And so the way the game was played is that they got points for various activities throughout their day. So they got a point for every step. They got 2,000 points every time they had their heart rate over 120 beats per minute for 10 minutes, so they could get 10,000 points for an hour of intense exercise. They also got for heart rate, we wanted to demonstrate heart rate variability, so the person who had the highest delta between their low heart rate and their highest heart rate got a bonus. They got points for sleeping, and they got points for adherence. So they took these power pills, which were basically these sugar pills with our sensor inside of them, and they had to take them precisely at 3 times every day. They had a 15-minute window to do it. So you may ask, was this effective in actually, getting people engaged, surprised? Did it change their point of view about our system? Well, anecdotally, our chief medical officer was actually with one of the participants during the challenge. And so he was an executive, and he basically, they were in the lobby of the building, and his office was on the 4th floor, and he had his entourage behind him. And they go to the elevator, he presses the up button, then he turns to everyone and he says, "Hey, wait, actually, can we take the stairs? Do you mind?" And so the whole entourage, trooped up 4 flights of stairs. So anecdotally, that's a pretty powerful story. So let's look at a few numbers here. The thing that was interesting is most of the executives actually took their pills on time, And so we had to find a different metric to basically award the winner of the power patient who took their pills. And what we did is we looked at timing adherence, so how closely they took it to the dose. And the guy who won, basically, we called him the Swiss clock because there was almost no variability from dose time from when he took those pills. The guy who won in the activity categories, this is the same person, at roughly 2,000 steps per mile. He walked 46 miles that weekend, those 3 days. And he spent 7.5 hours with his heart above, in the exercise zone. Kind of nuts. The guy who won the heart rate variability category, he had a heart rate in the low 40s when he was sleeping and in the 80s when he was exercising. And as a result of this, our legal advisors and our chief medical officer told us we can't have this category anymore. They're a little afraid. And then the person who won the sleep category, with 27.3 hours of sleep that weekend, he didn't win anything else. But he sure was well rested. And then we had these bonuses. So we had bonuses both to keep it engaging and also because we needed to have people keep their phones with them. Because we didn't have our system yet working on any mobile phone running Bluetooth. We only had it on an Android. And so we basically gave people a second phone to carry for the duration of the challenge, which will be different when we launch commercially. And so the bonuses made sure they had their phones with them so that they could be uploading data. So one of the bonuses we sent was, for the next hour, you get 10 points for every step instead of 1 point. And we were just super sneaky. And we sent one of these bonuses at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. So the company that we were doing this with, they had their quarterly earnings call the next day. And the top executives were in the meeting to prepare for that call at Monday morning at 9 a.m., which we didn't know. So one of the executives got the text message, and he literally stood up and walked out of the meeting so that he could get his extra points. And he was the head of strategy, and he did end up winning the competition. And thankfully, the earnings call still went well. But these guys were super engaged during this entire challenge. And we had this leaderboard that was running during the whole time, and we know that they were checking it compulsively because it went down for about 10 minutes at one point, and we got 15 phone calls asking what happened to the leaderboard. So, just to reflect on the Power Challenge, our clinical team went out and set up every single executive one-on-one with the Power Challenge to get them up and running. And when they came back, they were in absolute shock that none of the executives asked them anything about the technology. Nobody cared about the pill, the patch, whatever. What they cared about was how you played the game, what the rules were, could you game the system, the box looked pretty, that's what people were talking about. And so our clinical team, our engineers were flabbergasted, had no idea what was going on, and the design team, my team at Proteus, just kind of smiled knowingly, right? Because what we'd done is we'd made all that technology invisible, and what we'd made visible was the experience of this Power Challenge. So let's look at how this might translate to healthcare. So some of you may have seen, if you read any of these digests that come out, we have put a press release out earlier this week, so I can talk about it now in public, hallelujah, that we're launching our first commercial product in September called Helius. So Helius is a product that will help people manage complex medication regimes. So in the UK, pretty specific to the UK market, people get these things called adherence trays. So your pharmacist basically pre-fills your medication tablets with every dose that you need at the beginning of the week, and you get it for 1 week, and then you have 4 doses every day. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add one of our sensor tablets in each of the blisters with medication. And so that then we can basically capture when it is that you've taken each dose. So we did an enormous amount of research to figure out what should and shouldn't go inside of Helius. So Helius is fundamentally about connecting with your loved ones when they're remote. And there's actually a lot of nuance in that. So, for example, when we were out in the field, we learned that people who are chronically ill and take a lot of medication are often homebound and very isolated. And so what we did is we didn't want Helius to be a replacement for that daily check-in call. We wanted to augment the daily check-in call. And so there are things we did to make that happen. For example, there are steps within Helius that require live conversation to get the product to work. And we purposefully left all messaging capabilities out of Helius so that people would pick up the phone and talk live. These are a couple shots from the user interface for Helius. I mean, it's a very intimate product. It gives a view into how it is that you're spending your day. It gives you personal nudges that are very tailored to you. And you have to be really careful when you're designing something that's so intimate and personal. We recently were out in the field talking to people about what they think of Helius and how they react to it, and revving all of our design work. And we have to say we're really pleased with the results that we got. We feel that we really touched a nerve with people, and the nerve that we touched is that of reassurance. I think Helius is fundamentally a product about reassurance. It's not about the technology. It's not about a medication, but it's about reassurance and emotion. So the press release that came out earlier talked about how Lloyd's Pharmacy is our distribution partner for this product. And Lloyd's is the second largest pharmacy chain in the UK. They're a very community-based pharmacy chain. The pharmacists, when you go in there, they tend to know all of their customers. It's kind of, very old-timey, very nice atmosphere in their stores, but they're the second biggest. What really excited them about Helius is that they're no longer in the business of selling pills and syrups. Right? Helius puts them in the business of selling an emotion, of selling reassurance. And that's really powerful. So I want to leave you with one final thought. I think great design is about purpose. And a product has a purpose when it meets a real need. Purpose is critical. A technology on its own cannot have that purpose. And a technology can actually serve multiple purposes. I always want to say purpose-I, but I don't think that's right. So purpose can be about reassurance, as we've seen in Helius. And our technology, we've also seen that our technology can turn into a product that has the purpose of hope. So transplant patients who have, their health has been degrading for a really long time. And as soon as they have that, they have this perception that they're going to have their organ transplant, and they're suddenly going to jump out of bed and be better, and it's going to be a new life. But that's actually not what happens. It takes months and months to recover from these extremely intense major surgeries. And so in the transplant population, our technology becomes a product that's about hope, because what it does is on a daily basis, it gives you hope that you're getting better and you're on the path to recovery. In a mental health population, we've seen that our technology can be transformed into a product that's about independence. So people who suffer from mental health, they fight every single day to stay in recovery, to stay on their meds, to take care of themselves. And it's critical that they have help to do that, and our product can help, and a product based on our technology can do that and can help them maintain their independence. So it's, I think it's a designer's job to figure out what that purpose is. And when you get it right, the product is not about an underlying technology, but it's about the purpose that you're serving. So I encourage all of you to aim for that top bar and to look for the purposes that your products might support. So thank you very much. My email address is here. I'd love to hear from you, and thank you.